want to show you something I got in the mail. This is from one of the TV viewers, and thank you for sending so many great things, old things that you may have found in an old library or on a box in your house. This is from 1945. This is The Revolution Was. The Revolution Was by Garrett Garrett. He is a von Mises fan. People in von Mises love him. Okay, The Revolution Was. There are some who have never ceased to say very earnestly, something's going to happen to America and her form of government if we don't watch out. These were the innocent disarmers. Their trust was in words. They had forgotten their Aristotle. More than 2,000 years ago, he wrote of what can happen within the form, when one thing takes the place of another, so that the ancient laws will remain while the power will be in the hands of those who have brought about a revolution in the state. Back to the original question here. Can man rule himself? No. No, he cannot, unless he is an enlightened man that understands what Whitfield and Franklin knew. And Jefferson, fix reason firmly in her seat and question with boldness in an age of reason. An enlightened man, an educated man that doesn't forget Aristotle, a man who is empowered, and an entrepreneurial man, somebody who knows what he's striving for. All of this seems daunting today when you consider, according to a study of more than 2,300 undergraduate students, 45% of those who are graduating now from college say they've made no significant improvement in their critical thinking, reasoning, or writing skills during the first 2 years of college. It also seems a little daunting when you consider the state of our media. In this book, 1945, it talks about the problems in a revolution in America. And one of the problems, the first one is capture the seat of government. The second, seize power. 3, and I love this one, mobilize by propaganda the forces of hatred. And 4, attach the revolution to the 2 great classes. That means the rich and the poor. You got to get people to hate each other and then pit the rich versus the poor. Bring the classes head to head. It brings me to our final story today in the New York Times. I read a remarkable story about Frances Fox Piven. You, of course, as viewers of this program, know her as the icon of the radical left, the creator of the famed Cloward and Piven strategy to help the poor by overwhelming the welfare system, collapsing it, and bringing on a Marxist revolution. She wrote about it in the 1960s after being inspired by the Watts riots. She wrote about it again as recently as just a few weeks ago. She's mingled with presidents, was credited with overwhelming New York City's welfare system by Mayor Rudy Giuliani, and currently, as a professor, molds our young students' minds. You know, the students who made no significant improvement in their critical thinking and reasoning skills. You'd think in today's age of concern over heated rhetoric, the article would be welcome. Radicals call for violence exposed. But no, they had a different villain. We'll take this news story, if you can even call it that, from the New York Times apart piece by piece. We'll show you how the plan, talked about here, is being executed flawlessly using propaganda to organize hatred. And then I'm going to show you an attempted assassination on a governor, one of the 50, that failed. And you won't believe you haven't heard of it. Coming up. 2 weeks ago, I called for a repudiation of all violence on the left and the right. I named a militia and Frances Fox Piven as examples. Well, you know the real Frances Fox Piven, most likely. If you don't, please, I beg you, read all about her in a fantastic article written by Stanley Kurtz in the American Spectator. You can find it right now at glennbeck.com. Now, instead of being up in arms about her actual calls for violence, the New York Times decided to write a half-page story declaring me dangerous for calling her out. Now, ordinarily, I would say don't shoot the messenger, but I mean, the Times might get me for violent rhetoric again. But listen how she's framed in all of these headlines. This is an amazing thing. Here she is, widowed sociologist, 78. Or frail 78-year-old knitting grandmother. elderly college professor. And from the paper of record, 78-year-old liberal academic. The Times explained on Saturday to their readers, who are diminishing day by day, that Piven's life is now in danger because I read her words on my program. Well, how thoughtful of you, New York Times. But where was your concern when Piven called for strikes and riots based on the model in the one seen recently in Greece, which she deemed effective? These riots, the riots she lusts for, are more than just fun and games. One 32-year-old banking clerk who was 4 months pregnant had just phoned her mom because her mom was nervous when she saw the riots in the area that her daughter was working in. The daughter said, "Mom, don't worry. I'll call you right back. Don't worry." Mom never received the phone call back because her daughter died, along with 2 other colleagues. I know Europe doesn't count the unborn baby, but the baby was murdered as well, after firebombs were tossed through broken windows by communists, socialists, and anarchists, asphyxiating all of them in clouds of toxic smoke. Their office was targeted as a symbol of capitalist greed. And the New York Times is concerned about Piven's safety. Why? I mean, they must have some credible, firm, solid proof in order to pin a story in the paper of record, or else they'd be doing a story on the fears of bankers getting firebombed at their offices. But let's look at the evidence. Am I pulling this New York Times piece apart? Oh, yeah, line by line. Next. The premise tonight is enlightenment and the age of reason. Is there any reason? You know, look, you might watch this show and you may hate my guts. And you may say, I hate everything that guy says. I don't ask you to take one thing I say at face value. I'm never asking for your trust. I'm asking you, are you up to the challenge as an American citizen to use reason and fix reason firmly in her seat? Are you? Stop playing political games. I want to show you how this is working. And what by talking about Republicans and Democrats and name-calling everyone, we are losing valuable time to save the country. Okay, talking about the story from the New York Times. The paper reports that some say that Beck talking about Piven is endangering her life. I am against violence. It will end the republic. I've said it for 2 years. I've said it on my radio show for 2 or 3 years before that. No violence. I adhere to the teachings of Martin Luther King and Gandhi and Jesus Christ. Some say me talking about her can cause violence. Solid so far, New York Times, but let's see who some are. You ready? First, anonymous visitors to his website have called for her death. Well, I'm sorry for the nameless people commenting on a story. You mean like blog people that get on blog, like Huffington Post, they do that? Really? Let me say it again. Violence is not the answer. It never is. It's morally reprehensible. I denounce it, I reject it, and I claim anyone who starts it will be the one who starts the end of the republic. Could I be any more clear, America? The answer, no. Finally, there's this. The other source that says this is the Center for Constitutional Rights. However, there comes a point, they say, there comes a point when constant intentional repetition of provocative, incendiary, and emotional misinformation and falsehoods about a person can put that person in actual physical danger. Okay, this is the Center for Constitutional Rights. They wrote to the chairman of Fox News, Roger Ailes, claiming that she is in actual physical danger of a violent response because of me, because of this. Well, let me do this for the New York Times. I'm going to dumb it down for them. You remember the commercial with the owl? How many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop? And it was always 3, right? How many clicks? How many clicks to get to the center of this agenda? Let's see. 1. The Center for Constitutional Rights, which they don't explain. These are yummy. Doesn't take very many clicks. 1. Now, The Center for Constitutional Studies. Who funds them? Wait a minute. The source of, like, really bad stuff and the guy who's spending $1 million just trying to get me off the air? Get out of here. Really? One lick. Now let's see what else they got up their sleeve. They protested the defunding of Acorn. Oh! Wait until you hear this. You know who is a socialist spokesperson for them? Bertha Lewis. Yeah. Here she is on their website.
CCR takes on the cases that people say are hopeless. CCR is vitally important to the progressive movement. CCR, the Center for Constitutional Rights, lives up to its name because it's about the Constitution. Defend the Constitution.
Come on. New York Times. Do you really think your readers are this stupid? Or are they just so hypnotized by you that they won't look into anything? Don't take my word for it. Look it up. They're not. Your readers are smart, but you're treating them with an agenda like they're morons. That's why you can't pay your bills. That's why you're cozying up to somebody in Mexico and saying, we can't pay our rent. So here's how things sum up. Again, from the completely nonpartisan Acorn Bertha Lewis, George Soros, the Constitution thingy, quote, we are vigorous defenders of the First Amendment. Right. And here comes that big but again. We're defenders of the Constitution, but there comes a point when constant, intentional repetition of provocative, incendiary, and emotional misinformation and falsehoods about a person can put that person in actual physical danger. Wow. Do you think they saw any irony in that when they wrote it? Doesn't take long for the Soros constitutional shack to bail on the Constitution, does it? But let's take that last point. Because if they truly believe that constant, intentional repetition of falsehoods about a person can put them in danger, has the New York Times even bothered to consider what effect the New York Times and the rest of their peers are having on me, or Rush Limbaugh, or Bill O'Reilly, or Sarah Palin, and Tea Party members? Hey, wait a minute, I read something about this from a book from 1945. What was it? What was it that the Constitution people said? Oh yeah, that's right. Constant, intentional repetition of provocative, incendiary, and emotional misinformation and falsehoods about a person can put that person in actual danger. Wow, it's really good that I don't do that with Frances Fox Piven. I only use her words and her video. You can see them all at glennbeck.com. I could give the New York Times the information on the credible death threats because I have 15 at any given time. Yeah, I spent a lot of money on security. Isn't that weird? I've produced mine, to some of them to local enforcement, some to FBI, some to the Secret Service. Isn't that weird? But I wouldn't expect the Times to write about that angle. No, after all, it was only today that I even became aware of an actual assassination attempt on a governor of Missouri. Yeah, did you know that? Did you know that? Because I didn't know that. I read the New York Times. I didn't know that. All the way back in September of 2010. Gee, how old were you way back in September of, well, last September? You can barely remember it. The governor of Missouri, you know he's a Democrat. You would expect all that violent rhetoric, because wasn't Missouri where they said the Tea Party was very dangerous? Very dangerous, they were concerned. I remember that. I didn't hear any of the rhetoric stuff or any of the talk on MSNBC or anywhere. It was absent. In fact, 0 major television news outlets reported on it. 0. Some local newspapers thought it was important. Sure, local. Do we have the list of the local papers that covered this?